Hi, everybody. Welcome to Diversity and Inclusion in the Latin Classroom, put on by the good folks at Cambridge. I am John Bracey, aka Magister Bracey, coming today to talk to you all about how you can break down those roadblocks to creating more inclusive classrooms, schools, and ultimately school districts if we're going that high. I have the fortune of being able to present to you alongside of the legendary Rachel Ash. Rachel Ash, go ahead, tell us about yourself.
Hi, I'm Rachel Ash. I have been working on the same things that John Bracey has. So we are facing a lot of roadblocks right now, both in our classrooms, those natural roadblocks, the schools. Right now, it's a volatile time in our nation. Everybody is fighting against not just masks, but they get all excited at my school board meetings about DEI, CRT, SEL. They're getting fired up and yelling about them. And I think it's partly because acronyms are easy to seem very vague and make into monsters, and you can fight against those and nobody really knows what they mean. So I've been out there representing teachers and teachers' interests and students' interests, and even like just school personnel interests. And I'm also the cluster leader within my local union representation. So I've been kind of heavily involved in the last year in representing and pushing for better equity within the classroom and the district.
Nice. I've been in a similar fight, as it were, the good fight.
The good fight.
The good fight. Yes, similar sort of things, working with diversity, equity, inclusion, and all that at the various levels. I'm in a setting now that's very, very supportive, which is very helpful because now I have a lot of room to really pursue this stuff. And it's almost kind of, even that's kind of its own roadblock, is saying, oh my goodness, I can kind of do what I want. Now I actually have to make decisions. It's no longer just what can I get away with? It's, oh wow, what do I do? But let's kick off our discussion today and talk about first the classroom level. What can we do to break down the barriers to creating more inclusive classrooms?
Well, and I think that you hit like the two major things. You're either in a situation where you're supported, right? I think you and I are both fortunate we're in pretty supported situations. Or you are in a situation where you aren't as supported and you need to figure out ways to sort of work it in. And I'm just going to assume that you're here watching this because this is something that's important to you and you want to include it. So if you're not supported, then you have to figure out ways to work it in. So I think attacking it from both angles is going to be useful here. So if you're not supported, there are lots of small things you can do to make your classroom more welcoming and more open to diverse groups of kids that are just simple, and they're just subtle. Unless somebody is like actively really looking for it, they would literally have to be hunting you. And even then, I'm not sure they could. So like things like inclusive imagery, it's such an easy change to make. When you're making a PowerPoint, make sure that your imagery includes people of all religions, of all races, of different, people that have disabilities, different types of families. If you have all of that stuff in there, it's going to be really hard for someone to be like, are you trying to push your agenda on my children? It's almost impossible.
Oh, this is very, very, very true. Those subtle changes that you can make, such as imagery, including the full variety of humanity, that's something very subtle you can do.
Yeah.
And no one's going to be able to come in and look at it and say, okay, this is Magistra Ash trying to to recruit her, her little army to be made in her image. No, but there are things that are a little like that can really make people feel welcome, not just the people who are there, but the people who might come later.
Yeah.
Other little things you can do as well is you can update the materials that you use. So I know this is an old tired saying that you'll hear at any professional development for any teacher anywhere, but a textbook all by itself is not a curriculum. You can have a textbook that you use routinely, regularly, often even one that you love, but that by itself is not a curriculum, right? So the textbook itself is a tool. So there's no reason why you say, well, my book doesn't have stuff that shows different representations of types of families, or my book doesn't have the full range of diversity that my school does. Oh, well, no, there are materials out there. You can look at novellas, you can look at short stories and things that people have placed online. Put yourself out there. There's stuff there that's ready to go right now. In addition, you might want to look at some other things that are other subtle changes you can make. Like, for example, who is finding success in your class? Do you notice demographic trends in who finds success in your class and who doesn't? Do you notice demographic trends in who signs up for your classes and who doesn't? Do you notice trends in who ends up in level 3 and 4 versus who ends up stopping after 1 or 2? These are things to consider. Is your class truly accessible to everyone? Because if it is, everyone is going to be there and thriving. So something to think about.
And I mean, early on, even if you feel like you're making everything very accessible, but for some reason they're only feeding you certain groups, you can personally reach out to the school counselors and to the special education departments and say, look, I want to work with you to make my class work for all the kids. So, don't try to shield them from me. I'm not like that. I actually had to do that myself in one of my schools because the previous teacher just hadn't made the same kind of class that I had. So I had to reach out and say, no, look, I'm all about every kid. So, please send me every kid. And you can make those steps yourself. So, you can change, even if there's a pre-existing pattern, you can change the pattern.
Yes, absolutely.
So if you are able to do bigger things, do bigger things. So in my classroom, I have flags. I have a pride flag. I have a Black Lives Matter flags. And they are in my classroom. You can see them from the doorway. And I have actually had kids who are not my own come in and say that they were really excited to see them. Like just walking by, they loved seeing that type of thing. Support is a big deal. And a lot of kids, they don't know what are safe spaces. Just doing that means that my room is a safe space. So that's a bigger thing. That's definitely I am in a place where I can put those flags up, more or less.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that in a second.
This is true. But yeah, so I mean, in terms of the roadblocks that we encounter in our classrooms, right? Those are the ones right there. Like Rachel pointed out, I think a very strong one that I think we can all relate to is that the profession of teaching Latin in particular has not always been known for being an inclusive and accessible thing. So oftentimes we're undoing legacies of that. And so part of the roadblock is the perception, which I think is an accurate perception, that the Latin classroom is not welcoming. It's not designed for them to succeed. It's exclusive and elitist. I think that is an accurate interpretation. And so that's a roadblock. We have to prove through these different actions that our classrooms are welcoming to all, and prove it to the people when they get there by creating an environment where they can and do succeed. But even going beyond that, yeah, go ahead, Rachel.
Well, I was just going to say, one of the less subtle things when we're moving into the less subtle things you can do in your classroom is literally talk about that. And I know that you have something about that that you're including in this whole program. So I'm not going to get into heavy details, but I definitely talk about the whitewashing of the classics in my class. And I think it's an important thing. I do it at different levels. So like Latin 1 gets some level of generalization about it. But by Latin 4, we did a whole thing about it.
Oh, see, I mean, I mean, there's so much ripe territory there because I mean,
Mhm.
to put it frankly, we're not coming from the highest position here. We're kind of struggling for ways to improve. We're starting off at a pretty low point, if I'm being honest. So we got so many things to do, and it just takes some steps here and there to start making progress. You don't have to do it all at once, but yeah, look back, look at what's being whitewashed, which is pretty much everything, and start adding these things back in. These are all things that we can do. These are things that are within our power, within our control in our classrooms. But, or rather, and we work in classrooms that aren't free floating just in space somewhere. They are classrooms that are in school buildings with other people in them and colleagues and administrators and all sorts of other things going on here. What are some roadblocks that we encounter at the school level, school-wide level, that we can, that we can, tear down,
Oh
in
man.
one way or another?
So I think I encounter less of these. I think that I come across to most people as a very kind and calm person, and I am, but I'm also very difficult to cross. And I think that makes me kind of scary, or maybe I don't know why I'm scary. I actually don't, but I know that I can get scary to people. So um, I put up my flags. Elsewhere in the district, I knew a woman who, same school district, got reported to HR in the district for having a Black Lives poster in her room. And it became a whole thing. She won, but it became a whole thing. And I was ready. In fact, I hoped somebody would come to me because I have all my arguments in line. Civil rights, not political, because that was really the angle. It was teachers aren't supposed to indoctrinate kids with politics. By the way, I live in the South. I'm from Georgia. And I'm going to be honest, there's a bunch of teachers that do their best to indoctrinate kids with politics, but they're conservative politics. And so they completely get by with it. It is only if our politics are liberal that we're not supposed to do it. That's the reality. The letter of the law is not at all. The reality is only if you're conservative. So, but are they going to really try to tell me that equality is a political stance? Because it's not. And I have no qualms asserting the right of my students to know that they are equal and safe in my room. And there's no way that they could have begun to sway me on that. So I felt very confident. I was very comfortable. But not everybody is. And I understand that that can be a block.
When these things start to rattle the status quo, but the status quo that's not like an ideological status quo, but like a practical status quo. So for example, so say that you've decided like, okay, I am going to revamp what I do in my classes to include more diverse voices, or more accurate voices that depict the full spectrum of humanity in all of our students, right? But the teacher who teaches the next level class is teaching straight out of the textbook with no deviation from it. And so you might end up with a conflict that ends up being, well, if you're going to spend your time doing that stuff, well, then you're not going to get to chapter 15. And if you're not at chapter 15, then I can't do what I do. And you end up with that being the source of the conflict. So at the heart of it is still, my bad, at the heart of it is still, at the heart of it is still the same issue, is that one, you're trying to do, the work you're trying to do is create a more inclusive classroom. And the other person is saying, well, that's good that you're doing that, but I would rather that you get to chapter 15 than create a more inclusive classroom. So that can become tricky because it's not directly, it's not a direct conversation or direct explicit conflict in that area. But so in that situation where I think the best thing to do is communicate as much as you possibly can with that person if they're totally reasonable. And if you have any administrators who are sympathetic at all, lean on them. And if you have no administrators who are on your side and you have colleagues who are not supportive of this same goal as you, and you feel like it's impeding your ability to ethically teach to all kinds of kids, I would strongly recommend that you start working on your resume and start putting out feelers, because it's
a
not
toxic
worth
situation.
it.
Yeah. Because the truth is that is definitely a real block that happens. The idea of people get stuck on, well, kids need to know this and this and this. Otherwise, how can you say they know Latin? And which has been an interesting thing for me as well, because where I teach, we are definitely always experimenting and seeing what we can do. And part of the wonderful freedom that's there is a chance to include more diverse voices and more diverse ideas, and really see what we can create in a very holistic manner. But it also means, let's say one of our kids gets transferred to a different school in the area, then there's pushback because they're like, but they didn't know anything. They can't even conjugate, this verb. And I'm like, well, yeah, we learn conjugating in Latin 3 when they've had a lot of background, and then it's not for a grade. So it's only the ones who want to learn it, and it's really just like, it's like a bell ringer type of thing.
Yeah.
So, and the ones who want to learn it, and the ones who are like, oh my gosh, I don't even know what nouns and verbs are, they're fine because I'm never going to grade them on it. So there is that block there, because the people who receive those kids, they don't understand. They feel like they've not learned anything. And it doesn't matter that maybe I had kids reading some Caesar in Latin too. That was a fun story, which is why I picked it. But for them, all they can see is the lack of charts and the fact that they're not maybe reading the Aeneid in Latin 4. So
no, I think you hit it very well there. And I think that the big takeaway I got from what you were saying, particularly at the school-wide level, is communication is queen of all of that.
Yeah.
Communicating your goals, what it is that you want to do. So even starting it, so when you're starting these communications, I think it's very effective as a strategy to go in and into these conversations, say, all right, so we all agree that we want to make our classes accessible to all types of students, right? We want to have diverse, inclusive, equitable classrooms. We all share that goal, right? Like, okay, so with that in mind, how are we doing? And what do we need to do to get to our ultimate objective, which is to have a fully representative Latin program?
Well, and that's actually one of the difficulties where I'm at. The word equitable is currently, like, I've been called a communist multiple times by parents in our area because I use the word equitable, and a Marxist. Yes. Oh, don't even try to reason it out. It's not reasonable. The word equitable is bad. So you have to be really careful. But I think what we can all agree on, no matter if you're a parent or a different teacher who sits in a different direction in terms of politics, we all want student success. We want all students to be successful. So no matter where you live, everybody's going to agree that we want student success. I think everybody wants that. Hopefully, there is no person sitting in your school going, no, I want my kids to fail. So I think if you're in a place like mine, and certain words are words that create a lot of hostility, then I think you can't go wrong with the word success. And so if you use the words all the time in your communications, it's going to be a good way to communicate your goals with them. I want all the students in my classes to be successful, and everything I do is based on the idea of making every student feel successful and feel like they have the chance to be successful.
And there's nothing to argue there.
What are you gonna say? No, I'm sorry. That kid has to fail.
Like
that one over there.
I would be lying if I said that I hadn't met that person before.
That's so true.
I think we've all met, but I think we can all name them for the most part, which means there's not a ton of them. Like there really aren't. Like, so
well, and nobody's gonna argue and say, but you know, Joe over there's got a point. You know, like we're with him.
Yeah, like
they're all gonna be like, sense. Wow, that guy's really horrible.
Yeah. But no, that's totally true. But that's the way I think to go about doing it, exactly as you're saying. Focus everything around student success and navigate your own situation, you know, to the best of your ability, knowing the nuances and details and knowing what fights to pick and which ones to kind of work around. Mm-hmm. Like if you're in Rachel's setting, if the word equitable automatically makes certain people just shut off, then there's no point in having like a drag out fight about the use of the word. Find a different word that doesn't create that instant reaction, but get you to the same result. Because remember, the idea at the end is we want to make programs that work for everyone. It's not about defeating other people who disagree with us. It's not about proving ourselves right. It's not about, you know, owning other adults. So it's whatever we have to do to get to that end, that's what we do. And and even if at times that means, you know, walking away from one particular fight because it will kind of get in the way of the overall goal, that's fine.
Yeah.
But that's where we're at. So just know, as we wrap up here, that as Latin teachers in particular, a lot of us are blessed to work with wonderful colleagues like myself and Rachel are. But I know a ton of us out there are working all by themselves. And just know that if you're a Latin teacher, you're never by yourself. There's a whole community of us out there who are looking to help you. So if you're looking to engage in this work and the roadblocks start popping up, feel free to reach out to any of us. We're all in this one together. Rachel, any closing thoughts?
If you are looking to reach out farther, go ahead and join the union. I know it feels sometimes like it's not going anywhere. It is. It's just a complicated fight. We're both union members, and we both are union activists, and we're both fighting. So I think both of us believe in the idea of having a union and fighting and trying to make not only our lives better through the union, but also trying to make the union better. And we need the best people we can in the union in order for that to be the case.
Well, 100% get involved in any way that you can. If things are going great in your classroom, wonderful. If things are going good in your school, even more wonderful. If you have opportunities to continue that work or fight the good fight at the district level, jump on all of those opportunities. Because, I mean, if you're interested in this kind of work, we could certainly use you.
Yeah.
So hang in there.
Yes.
You're doing it right. You're moving in the right direction. We're here to help you. Thanks for stopping by, and hopefully you took some lessons away that you can bring back to your school. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Peace.